Hi, and welcome to what is episode 2 of Scarlets Satanic Panic. We've just been filming for a bit of lamb stuff, hence we've got our wares and so on there. So we thought, to be fair, we've got a nice bit of light, so this is a good time to actually do this video. Not what we were originally planning though.
No, the lovely folks at the Sun newspaper in the UK provided us with an actual Satanic Panic to talk about. So, as we know, during lockdown, people have been enjoying a slower, more retro pace of life. People have been baking their own bread. They've been indulging in arts and crafts and having socially distant street parties to celebrate VE Day. And national newspapers have been publishing utter bullshit that's likely to result in hate crimes. So, without further ado, we're going to tell you about the lovely events from the eve of Beltane.
I'm actually wondering as well whether we should have a nice little chitty to start off with. We could call this, "Oh, Silly Sun."
Yeah, we have a feeling we might end up doing a few of these. Hopefully no more of them will fill up an episode, but we thought this would be of interest to a lot of you, and those of you that are on our Facebook page, it would be interesting for you guys to know how what we did on there turned out. So, for those of you that don't know, the Sun newspaper is a UK tabloid paper. And a tabloid paper is basically a paper that mostly publishes gossip and sensationalist stories with news mixed in. Basically to make it sort of a simple, easier read for people that maybe don't enjoy a broadsheet or find news a bit dry. The problem with tabloids is they very, very, very regularly overstep the mark, yet somehow manage to get away with it. The Sun, in particular, has been a source of controversy from almost since it started. It's actually boycotted an entire city of the UK, which is Liverpool, due to its reporting of the Hillsborough disaster, which we're not going to go into today because we could fill a whole video on that. But if you're not familiar with what happened at Hillsborough, look it up and come back. But the Sun basically was disgraced back then, and since then it's continued to sink to lower and lower depths. Its sister paper, The News of the World, was actually shut down due to hacking people's phones. And they weren't just hacking the phones of celebrities for entertainment purposes, they were also hacking the phones of victims of some quite hideous crimes. And the Sun decided to rescue the journalist from that paper and bring it to the Sun on Sunday. So this gives you a bit of a background on what sort of newspaper it is. It's currently very right-wing leaning, but over the years it has swayed a bit, but at the moment it's very much right-wing, very much flag-waving, Brexit supporting. Pretty much what most of you watching this are going to be the exact opposite of.
Yeah.
So that sort of gives you a bit of a background on what sort of newspaper it is, and none of us expect a lot from them anyway. I don't really think anybody in sort of our circle of friends, and probably most of you watching this, will never even read it. And for those of you sort of too young to even really be that familiar with newspapers, as they've not really been a staple of people's lives now for a number of years, if you've ever heard your older relatives, parents or so, refer to a paper as a rag, that is normally how you'd refer to a tabloid newspaper, which, considering they're known as that, tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, it does say a lot really, yeah.
So, we're going to read you the article, and we're going to try our best to do it as seriously as we can, as please remember, this was printed in a national newspaper. It was not advertised as an opinion piece, it's just a little article on the side of a news story. So now we've sort of set the scene for it, we're going to read you the article.
Right. And for this, because it's serious, I'm going to need some seeing glasses. Here we go. So, the title of this article was Trouble Brewing. And it starts, "Spare a thought for Britain's vibrant community of pagans and witches." It's a nice start.
Yeah.
So we are a vibrant bunch. "Tonight is the eve of Beltane, an important festival for many assorted oddballs.
You can see where this is going.
Normally, Normally, they would be stripped off and shagging goats around a blazing fire or something.
Remember the or something, as that's going to be very, very important in this video.
Absolutely. But social distancing means it is going to be very hands-off affair, because even witches get the flu.
So, that was actually published both on the Sun's website and printed in their physical paper.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be forgiven for thinking that belonged in the Onion. When I first came across this on Facebook, I thought it had come from the Onion. It wasn't until reading the comments and seeing there was a complaints procedure that I realised this actually had come from a national newspaper. I was a bit taken aback, to be honest, because though the Sun's reporting has never been particularly held in high regard for being accurate or fair, it sounded like something that somebody's... it just sounded like something a pissed off teenager had thrown together and shoved in the paper that had slipped past the editor's notice, or something. That'll also be important later, but
yeah.
The lack of any sort of journalistic integrity there was just really surprising, because normally they are at least a little bit careful when it comes to faith and religion of who they piss off. But I take it, due to the fact that the virus is going on, lots of other things, they thought it would just slip past unnoticed. Because as I say, that article is nestled there next to factual news stories and their usual celebrity gossip and whatever else they decide to publish that day. So, the Pagan Federation and the Pagan Police Association put together a way and a set of instructions that you could submit a complaint about the article if you weren't happy with how you felt as a pagan or a witch or occultist you were being represented. And these were quite sort of widely shared around, and we shared it as well, because if you follow our Facebook page, you'd have seen both the article, links to the online article, and the way to submit your complaint. And when all of us submitted complaints, the article did indeed, in theory, breach about 3 of them. It breached accuracy because we don't shag goats. It just...
Nope.
No. It also breached discrimination, obviously, because you've decided to single out pagans and witches, write any sort of shit and link it to us. And it also breached factualness, because there's no basis in fact there. I mean, possibly maybe the author of this article, who interestingly decided to go nameless. The article is credited to the Press Association, so we have no idea who we can thank for this highly educational little piece. So, dutifully, lots of you, and the response was amazing. I mean, we saw how many of you shared it from both our Scarlet and Chains page and Satanic Panic, and we saw all your comments of how you'd all dutifully submitted educated, strong complaints against this article, rather than rushing to the Sun's social media pages and shit-slinging, which, as entertaining and instant gratification that would have been for all of us, I thank all of you for taking the really dignified approach and doing this the official way.
Yeah.
And we're very, very lucky to have associations like the Pagan Federation, the Pagan Police Association, that gave a central point for all of us to come together. And they're the ones we can thank for getting this effort organised, and the fact we were all able to respond to this, because this would have completely slipped past our notice because we don't read it. And most of you watching this
Probably
wouldn't
don't
read
read it,
it,
yeah.
because if you're spending your free time watching a podcast wanting to learn about paganism, occult and witchcraft lifestyles and our practices, you'd have better things to read. Really would. So, we all dutifully put our complaints in an educated and informative manner, expecting that, of course, the press standards would go, yeah, you shouldn't have published that, and given them a slap on the wrist or something. But when we got the response, we're very rarely speechless.
Kept us quiet for a minute.
It's
yeah.
We're going to share with you their response. Like, it is quite long.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read some of the bits of it, so because it was quite long.
They repeat themselves a lot in trying to prove their innocence, and they use an awful lot of words that would be too long for the average reader to understand or something. So we're going to read what we've got, and then we're going to give you a bit of a too long didn't read breakdown.
Yeah.
Because
we'll probably do each paragraph maybe and look at it like that.
Because they've worded this in such a way that they're hoping that people didn't understand the wording they've used. But the Sun's complaints department is obviously very, very used to doing this.
Oh God, yeah.
As this response is sort of, it's the equivalent of saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm not going to even acknowledge it.
Yeah. Right, so.
Reading glasses back on.
Yep, indeed.
And as I say, think happy thoughts, because you're going to want to throw things in a minute.
Right. When the ISPO receives a complaint, the executive staff review it first to decide whether the complaint falls within our remit and whether it raises a possible breach of the editor's code of practice. We have read your complaint carefully and have decided that it does not raise even a possible breach of the editor's code. We're straight up saying...
Straight off basically telling us all to fuck off.
Yeah. Many complaints said that the article breached Clause 12, discrimination, because it discriminated against pagans and witches. Now, Clause 12 is designed to protect specific individuals mentioned by the press from discrimination based on their race, colour, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, if you can pronounce that one, apparently I can't, or any physical, mental illness or disability. It does not apply to groups or categories of people. The concern that the article discriminated against pagans or witches in general did not relate to an individual. This meant that it did not engage the terms of this clause. Now, that says to me that actually they're saying, yes, it was discriminating against pagan witches, but from a technicality point of view, because it wasn't talking about an individual pagan or witch, it was fine.
Which is actually, it's quite alarming when you think that, in theory, there is nothing to stop the press attacking even protected groups of people and writing things like this that aren't actually factual, but in fact just opinion, without ever announcing it's an opinion. When you consider how careful you have to be in your online communication, like in this video, there's times that you'll notice we're picking our words very, very carefully. Because even though there's no rules against it, I don't like to make sweeping generalisations against groups of people, nor does Drew, and nor does most of you watching, because myself, along with a lot of other people, are under the opinion that labels are for bottles. You know what I mean? They're not for people. And the fact that groups aren't actually protected against the press is something that's quite concerning. And like us, probably a lot of you weren't aware of that, because we certainly weren't, and I'm very surprised how they get away with it, because in almost, even if you were to say do that just on Twitter, from your own personal account, you could be done for malicious communications. Yet the actual press are not held to the same standards, even though they'll have been educated and most of them will have a university degree, which should have taught them the rules of journalism. Normal people using social media are held to higher standards than our press, which is actually quite alarming. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
I'm with you there. So, the next main section. Many complaints also said that this article breached Clause 1, accuracy, as it stated that tonight is the eve of Beltane, an important festival for many assorted oddballs. Complainants said that this was inaccurate as pagans and witches were not oddballs. Probably not.
No.
And this was unsupported by the text, as previously explained. The editor's code makes clear that the press has the right to give its own opinion and to publish the individual's views, as long as...
Yet, just to interrupt you for a second there, as you know from the article we read to you, nowhere was it made clear this was actually an opinion piece.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere was it in plain English that this was this author's opinion, this editor's opinion, this journalist's opinion, which, considering this is a newspaper aimed at people that like an easier read and maybe want things more in layman's terms than technical descriptions, ethically that is quite iffy if you decide to not make your explanation clear, even though you know the majority of your reader base needs things made quite clear for them to distinguish between factual and opinion-based articles. Wasn't so?
Yeah. So what was editor's code makes clear that the press has the individual rights, the right to give its own opinion and to publish individuals' views, as long as it takes care to distinguish between comment, conjecture and facts. In this instance, oddballs, which are put in quotes, was clearly the columnist's own characterisation of pagans and witches, appearing as it did in an opinion piece. It was not a statement of fact, and there was therefore no possible breach of Clause 1 on this point.
But once again, there was no clarity within the article.
Never said
in this author's opinion. You know what I mean? Or all the terms that would normally trigger you to realise this is an opinion piece rather than a factual piece. Some of you might go, well, but the writing style would lead me to believe it's it's an informal opinion piece. The Sun reports on normal news articles in the same very informal, layman's terms, easy to understand language. So it actually, even the tone of the articles, you still would struggle to tell them apart. And that is one of the things that we actually, I think I put it in my complaint I took issue with, that there was no easy way of marking out either in the tone of the article or it was never expressed anywhere.
Yeah. Now, the next bit. Many complainants said that this article breached Clause 1 accuracy, as it stated that normally they would be stripped off and shagging goats around a blazing fire or something.
And that or something is back.
Complainants said that this was inaccurate, as neither pagans or witches engage in such activity. We again note that this statement appeared in the context of an opinion piece. We note that the phrase, or something, distanced the author from the literal meaning of the claim and indicated that it was an attempt at humour or satire. For these reasons, we considered that this statement was clearly the hyperbolic and satirical opinion of the writer, rather than a statement of facts. Further, the preamble of the editor's code makes clear that the code should not be interpreted in a way that infringes the right to challenge, shock, be satirical or entertain. Therefore, there is no possible breach of Clause 1 on this point.
This is, I think, actually the most frightening part of the entire thing, and this was where I wanted to start throwing things, because what they've basically said, once again, us as the general public using social media to communicate are held to higher standards than journalists. Because if you made that comment, as say, on Twitter, on Facebook, or on YouTube, as we're doing now, you could be held for malicious communications, because it would be considered a hate crime, discrimination, and just in general in poor taste and profane. Which, amazingly, we do still have laws around that. Who knew?
Yeah. But the thing that got me was the guy who wrote that article knew that literally by putting ... or something, that
washed his hands of all responsibility.
It just gave him no responsibility at all for what is written, which is so wrong. The fact that it can do that.
So this is the thing. What this has taught all of us is, if you're a journalist, you can say whatever you want, as long as you add or something. A statement that doesn't make it clear to the public it's a satirical piece or an opinion piece, because it's not even particularly acceptable written English. It's acceptable spoken English, but actually, if there's any English teachers watching, let us know, but I'd imagine you wouldn't be too impressed if that appeared in a written work that you were marking.
Yeah. I think as well.
It's frightening.
Yeah, and because the pagan, in fact, what's the two fakes? So you got the pagan police,
the Pagan Police Association, and the Pagan Federation.
Yeah, it's worth checking their Facebook because they've put together
they've picked this apart. They've suggested that maybe some changes to the editor's code should be made: A, to protect groups, and B, to make it more clear when the author is writing an opinion piece or stating their opinions on something. Because the fact is, we live in a day and age where the President of the United States pretty much suggested people should ingest cleaning products. So, if you'd have told me that years ago, I'd have thought it was a piss take. But we're getting genuine news stories, especially during coronavirus, that are just downright bizarre, because everybody is looking for a way forward, and some very strange things are being put in the media that are so weird you have to fact check them yourself, only to be horrified at the fact they're true. Now, when we're in an age where clarity of information and fake news is a major problem, why is the Press Association not setting better standards for itself? That is the big question here. It's one of those things that very few people, apart from those of you watching, and obviously fellow witches, pagans, occultists, Satanists, any of us that are in that spiritual circle, very few people are going to care. And the fortunate thing is, a lot of us are already quite used to the fact people don't really understand what we're about, and most of us have very good humour with having to correct people about things. But if you're, say, a younger child at school that has pagan parents, and there's a good chance they're probably already bullied, because that's the sort of world we live in, that sort of article could make a child or young person's life absolutely miserable.
It's just extra fuel, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but if you put that article on its head, if you replaced witches with Muslims, or with Christians, or with Jews, or with Sikhs, or with any other mainstream religion, there would be hell to pay. Even though that legally they could do it, they wouldn't do it, because they wouldn't take the risk. Now, it would make the front page of every other newspaper if the Sun had turned around and said that Christians, Muslims, or Jews, or Sikhs, or Buddhists, or even Scientologists, they'd probably have been sued before the article even came out, but no other religion would this be acceptable. And considering that paganism is a protected religion and faith group under the 2010 Equality Act in the UK, why is this allowed to happen?
And a bloody old one as well.
Yeah.
We've been going for a lot longer than a lot of the other religions.
We are technically the UK's original religious belief system. Most of what you know now, all the festivals you know, are pagan based. I mean, Beltane in the UK is May Day, and obviously the maypole, though you don't see it that much now, is obviously a pagan fertility symbol. Hence why they started trying to say that we shag goats that day, because technically your dance around the maypole is for the fertility of yourselves and the land, and just bringing good things for the year to come. Yeah, I mean, though it does have sexual undertones to it, depending on your audience, you more so discuss it's the fertility of the land, yourselves, and successful moves forward. Because like all religions, there are multiple interpretations of different festivals, but goats don't come into it anywhere.
No.
And I think it's one of those things. This is showing that whilst we're in a period of history where people are very scared, they are going back towards old ways, which is pointing the fingers at things they don't understand. And fatalistically, I think it's very interesting that we have very much gone backwards during when the virus has been around. And I have a horrible feeling we are going to see way more of reporting like this due to the fact that paganism and witchcraft is getting more positive mainstream exposure and more younger people are being drawn towards it. Yes, mostly through pop culture things, American Horror Story, Sabrina. And regardless of how you feel about those, it's still showing more young people there are different options outside the standard religions. And yes, there might need to be a lot of re-education done from things they've learned from TV, but that's the same as any generation. Yeah. It often takes a major pop culture movement to revive things like older religions and older spiritual beliefs. And I think though we've benefited very much from that, I think we're going to be starting to see the backlash from it. I mean, more so in America, because the Satanic Panic is still very, very alive and well in the US. I mean, there's parts of the US that looking like it would be advised just not to travel in the first place. But in the UK, it's very disappointing because we're a very multicultural society here and we're a very tolerant society. And though based on that, you can complain further, but they have made up their minds and they will just make it a very expensive, complicated fight back. And we wish the Pagan Federation and the Pagan Police the best of luck.
Absolutely.
And all the other organisations that have backed them in their response. But realistically, we are unlikely to actually see the results we want from that. So I think the best thing we can all do is try and bring positivity around ourselves and our practices. We're very lucky to be in a very vibrant community of very generous people. A lot of us do charity work and various things for the community. So we're known members of our community, and yeah, you might affectionately be known as the local weirdo, but in truth, a lot of us don't really mind as long as people are being kind about what we do. And even if they don't understand it, if they're leaving us in peace, that's good enough.
Yeah.
But I can see us seeing more of this because the papers can't be as racist as they used to be, even though reading that, I'm not sure why they can't be, because technically that gives them free rein to upset anybody with no real comeback. But it looks like paganism and witches might be the sun's new punching bag, because whoever wrote that knew they would get away with it.
And they wrote it in a way as well to make sure they could get away with it.
Yeah, and the fact that there is no one credited to that. It's one of those. I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I have a feeling we are going to see more of this. And the best thing we can all do is respond to it as we did with this, in an official, dignified manner, because we're all going to have a lot of work to do. Because though we've seen a lot of growth, I think we're all going to be having to educate an awful lot of people. So remember, all of you in the UK and from every other country you're watching, it's worth checking what your rights are. As a pagan, you are protected. You cannot be discriminated against for being a pagan. And remember, you can stand up for your rights to not be mistreated due to your beliefs. And I think that's sort of the most important thing we can say from this.
Yeah, definitely.
Is we all need to come together and look after each other.
Absolutely, because we've got many, many different paths that everybody's walking along. But yeah, we need to respect and look after all those paths. Because
as that group of Sun journalists have just found out, there are a lot more of us, and we do have a voice. And I'm sorry this one's not been quite as entertaining as what we'd normally do, but...
Or what we're planning.
Yeah, or what we were planning. The next one will be back to usual sweary fun and lots more entertaining things to talk about, but...
Yeah. I think we just had to say something.
Yeah. Because it was... Once we received that reply, we knew that nothing officially was going to be done about this. All we can all do is state our opinion, and just like the Sun journalists, everything we have said here, apart from things we have quoted, is obviously our opinion.
Absolutely.
And
other than the bits we read, because that was actually word for word what it said.
I think just in case everybody, be careful out there, because there are now a whole new batch of people that have been miseducated by the likes of the Sun, and I have a feeling there's going to be a hell of a lot more of them to come.
Yeah.
So next time we're going to be back with a much more interesting, fun and light subject. We're going to talk through some of our favourite tools and toys that we've collected over the years that we like to use in our practice and our craft.
Yeah. So, for the moment, we shall say...
Fuck you to the Sun.
Oh, silly Sun. We shall bid you all goodbye and see you soon.
See you soon. Keep safe, everyone.
Will do. Bye.
Bye.